Last week, we talked about something that resonated with so many of you. Nobody prepared us for adulthood. Not because adulthood is terrible, but because it's different from what many of us imagined. One comment kept appearing over and over again. People weren't just talking about careers, or money, or responsibilities. They were talking about loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness where you're physically alone, the kind where you're surrounded by so many people, yet you feel so unseen. That got me thinking. When we were children, making friends felt so effortless. Now, it feels like applying for a job. Why? That's the question that I would love for us to explore together. Part 1. We never learned how to make friends. Most of us have never actually learned how to make friends. Think about your childhood for a second. Did someone actually sit you down and teach you about friendship? Probably not. Instead, friendship happened. You sat next to someone in class. You both liked the same cartoon. You complained about the same homework. You laughed together. You kept seeing each other every single day. And eventually, you became friends. It felt effortless. But was it? Not really. You were surrounded by something psychologists often call repeated exposure. The more often we are exposed to someone in a positive environment, the more likely we are to like them. And as children, that happened automatically. School created the perfect conditions. Every weekday, for years, you didn't need to schedule anything. You didn't need to send a calendar invite. You didn't even need to be particularly outgoing. You just had to keep showing up. Now, compare that to adulthood. You meet someone interesting. You exchange Instagram accounts, TikTok accounts, Snapchat accounts, email addresses, phone numbers. Maybe you say, we should definitely hang out sometime. And then, nothing. Not because either of you are bad people, but because adulthood requires intentionality. Friendship no longer grows by accident. It grows through deliberate effort. And that is something many of us were never prepared for. Personal reflection. Moving to Japan is actually what made this reality very difficult to continue ignoring. Back home, and even back in college in the US, I had a lot of people who already knew me. Friends who understood my jokes before I even finished telling them, people who remembered old stories, inside jokes, shared memories. Then I moved. And suddenly, Every conversation started from zero. Every relationship began with introductions. Every connection required courage. I remember realizing something one day. Making friends as an adult wasn't harder because I had changed or anything like that. It was harder because all the structures that had once made friendship easy had disappeared. No classroom, no dormitory, no tennis court, no sports team meeting every afternoon, no neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. Just work, home, repeat. Maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe you moved to a new city. Maybe you changed jobs. Maybe your friends got married. Maybe you moved across the country to be with the one you love. Maybe you had children, moved away. Or maybe life simply happened. And one day you looked around and realized you weren't surrounded by close friends anymore. Not because you failed, but because life changed. Part 2: The Hidden Architecture of Friendship. Okay, so here's something we rarely think about. Friendships honestly don't just depend on people, they really depend on places. Think about every meaningful friendship that you've ever had. Where did it begin? In a church? In a classroom? In a sports club? In a neighborhood? At university? At work? Do you notice something? There was always a place where friendship started. A place where your paths naturally crossed. Again and again and again. Those places quietly did most of the work. They gave you opportunities to become familiar, to build trust, to notice each other, to laugh over small moments. Friendship wasn't forced. It emerged naturally because the environment made it possible. I think as humans, we often give ourselves all the credit for our friendships. But the environment where we meet our friends also deserves a lot of acknowledgement too. And that is where adulthood changes everything. Because honestly, many of those environments simply disappear. We graduate, we move, we change jobs, people start families, schedules stop aligning. Life becomes fragmented. And suddenly, we expect friendships to survive without the very conditions that created them in the first place. It's a bit like taking a fertile plant out of its soil and wondering why it suddenly won't grow. Maybe the plant isn't the problem. Maybe the environment changed. Part 3: We're all busy, but busy isn't the whole story. When adults talk about friendship, one phrase comes to mind over and over again: I'm just so busy. And to be fair, most of us genuinely are. A typical weekday, Monday to Friday, might look something like this: wake up, get ready for work, commute. Work 8 or 9 hours, commute home, cook dinner, clean, reply to messages, maybe squeeze in some time for exercise, maybe spend time with your partner or children. Then before you know it, the day is over. Then before you know it, it's time to sleep and start the same cycle again the next day. So yes, time matters. But I don't think busyness tells the whole story. Think back to university. Were you busy then? Probably. Most definitely, especially during finals. You had assignments, exams, part time jobs, sports, clubs, a social life, deadlines, the list goes on. Yet, somehow, many of us still manage to build very close friendships. Why? Because we didn't have to create opportunities to see each other. The opportunities already existed. You'd bump into someone on the way to class, run into a friend in the cafeteria, sit beside the same people every Tuesday morning in class. Connection happened in the spaces between life. But today, those very spaces are disappearing. Many of us work remotely. We wear headphones during our commute. We order groceries and do most of our shopping online. We stream movies at home. I see you, Netflix watchers. We message instead of meeting up in person. Little by little, the casual interactions that once stitched our lives together are quietly fading away. And it's not that we've become less social, it's that our environments have become less social. And that's a very important distinction. Because if we think that the problem is simply that we're bad at friendships, we'll keep blaming ourselves. But if the problem is that our daily lives no longer create opportunities for connection, then maybe the solution isn't becoming a different person. Maybe it's finding different environments. Part 4: The Social Media Illusion. So, there's another reason as to why adult friendships just feel so confusing. We're constantly seeing everyone else's highlights. You open Instagram, someone's on vacation with 10 friends. Someone else is celebrating a birthday. Another person is out every weekend for dinner with their group of friends. It starts to look like everyone has found their people except for you. But here's something worth remembering. Social media shows us moments, not relationships. A smiling group photo doesn't actually show you how often those friends speak. It doesn't show you or tell you if that person was feeling lonely before that picture was even taken. It doesn't tell you if two people in that photo haven't had a meaningful conversation with each other in months. It certainly doesn't tell you how many invitations were declined before that dinner finally happened. We compare our everyday reality to someone's carefully selected moments. And honestly, that's not a fair comparison. I think many adults are carrying the same quiet question. Is it just me? The answer, based off of countless conversations I've had and comments I've read, is no. It isn't just you. There are millions of adults who are quietly longing for deeper connection. Many are sitting in apartments just like yours, just like mine, looking at the same social media posts, wondering the exact same thing. And the irony of that is that it's almost heartbreaking. We're literally surrounded by people who want friendship. Yet, we all assume that everyone probably already has enough friends. So no one makes the first move. Part 5: Friendship Requires Vulnerability. All right, so there's one more obstacle that we actually don't talk about enough. As children, vulnerability comes naturally. You ask another child, hey, can I play with you? If they say yes, it's a cool thing. If they say no, it hurts for about 5 minutes. Then you're off probably climbing trees and chasing butterflies and trying to catch bugs. You've completely forgotten about the rejection, right? As adults, rejection feels a lot heavier. Inviting someone for coffee often feels risky. What if they're too busy? What if they don't actually like me? What if I'm bothering them? So instead of risking rejection, we wait. And they wait too. Sometimes two people who would genuinely enjoy each other's company never actually become friends because they assume that the other person isn't interested. Do you see the loop? It's a strange paradox. The older we become, the more courage friendship seems to require. Yet courage has always been a part of friendship. Children just don't overthink it nearly as much as adults do. Part 6. What we're really missing. By this point, you might be thinking, okay, you've talked throughout this video about the things that we're noticing are a problem. What can we actually do about it? Before I actually answer that question, I think it's important that we acknowledge something. This video is not going to end with a list of 5 ways to make new friends, because I honestly don't think that's the real solution. The real problem isn't that we've forgotten how to talk to people. The real problem is that we've lost the environments that have helped us to make connection feel normal. For most of human history, community has never been something that we've had to schedule. It has and was woven into everyday life. People have gathered at local markets. People gather at places of worship. People gather at local libraries, at cafes, at sports events. People saw the same faces again and again. And trust wasn't built overnight. It was built one ordinary interaction at a time. A smile, a conversation, helping someone to carry something, sharing a meal, watching children play at a park. Those moments may have seemed insignificant on their own, but together they created something incredibly valuable. They created belonging. Today, many of us move between 3 places: home, work, and the places where we spend money. If we aren't at work, we're at home, and vice versa. If we leave home, it's usually to run errands, buy groceries, and to check something off our to-do list. Everything has become transactional. Very few places invite us to simply exist, to linger, to meet people without an agenda, to become familiar with one another. And I think that's one of the greatest losses of modern adulthood. Not because we've stopped caring about people, but because we've stopped designing our lives around community. This is why a third place exists. When I chose the name, A Third Place, it wasn't because the name sounded nice. It was because it described something that I had been searching for a while. A place that isn't home. A place that isn't work. A place that doesn't constantly require me to spend my money. A place where people can simply be. Somewhere conversations happen naturally. Where people feel seen. Where strangers slowly become familiar faces. Where loneliness isn't something to hide. It's something we gently heal from together. Right now, a third place isn't a physical cafe or a community center. It's a conversation. It's a growing community of people who are asking the same questions. People who are saying, I miss genuine connection. I want to know my neighbors. I want friendships that aren't built around convenience. I want intentionality. I want somewhere where I belong. If that's you, then welcome. You're exactly who this space is for. Part 8. A small challenge. Before you leave this video, I'd like to offer you a small challenge. It's not something that will change your life overnight. Just one small act of intentional connection. Maybe it's sending a message to someone you've been thinking about. Maybe it's inviting a coworker for coffee after work. Maybe it's staying a little longer after church, after class, or after an event instead of rushing home. Maybe it's finally introducing yourself to someone who you see every week but have never built up the courage to have a conversation with. Don't do it because you're trying to collect friends. Do it because every meaningful friendship starts with one conversation. Not every conversation will become a friendship, but every friendship begins with a conversation. And that's enough for today. Conclusion. If you've spent months or even years feeling like making friends has become impossible, I hope you leave this video knowing one thing. You are not behind. You are not strange. You are not the only one. Many of us are trying to build friendships in a world that quietly makes it harder to build. Understanding that doesn't solve everything, but it does replace shame with compassion. And that's a powerful place to begin. Next week, I actually want to explore something that surprised me whilst making this video. Friendship isn't just difficult to start. For many adults, it's becoming something that's difficult to keep. Why do so many friendships slowly fade even when nobody did anything wrong? Why do some relationships survive for decades while others quietly disappear? And what can we learn from that? That's what we'll be talking about in the next episode. The friendship crisis no one is talking about. If today's conversation resonated with you, I would love to hear your story. When was the last time you made a new friend? What made it possible or what made it difficult? Please leave a comment below. Read someone else's comment too. You might discover that the person on the other side of the screen has been carrying the same questions you have. If this video made you feel a little less lonely, please consider subscribing, because that's what I hope to build here. Not just a channel, a third place. Thank you for spending time with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.